This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Welcome back to Justice Pending. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan. And today we're covering one of the most enduring mysteries in American true crime, the disappearance of TV news anchor Jodi Huisentruit.
Yes, it was June 27th, 1995 in Mason City, Iowa, when this young journalist, just 27 years old, was preparing for another morning on the air. But she never made it to the station.
What was left behind told a haunting story. Personal belongings scattered across a parking lot, drag marks on the pavement, and a life cut short before it had really begun.
30 years later, her case is still unsolved. And yet, it continues to pull in new leads, new theories, and new persons of interest.
This is Justice Pending.
All right, let's set the scene. It's the morning of June 27th, 1995. Jodi worked the early shift, and around 4 a.m., Jodi's producer noticed she hadn't arrived at the studio. She called her, and Jodi actually answered. She said she had overslept, but would be right in.
But that just wasn't true. By 7 a.m., she hadn't arrived, and concern turned to panic. The police were called to Jodi's apartment complex.
And what they found was clearly a crime scene. Her red Mazda Miata sat in the parking lot. Nearby, her red high heels, her hairdryer, earrings, even her car key was bent in the door. There were drag marks across the wet pavement. It was obvious something terrible had happened.
Yeah, there was no question. This was not a voluntary disappearance. This was I'm going to go back to sleep, hit the snooze button. Jodi had been abducted.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about all of those personal belongings that were found right by her car. She was going to work. She was late. We've all had that moment where we slept late and were trying to get to the office on time. She even had a hairdryer with her. So it's just, it makes me think of like a crime of opportunity. Because it seems like this wasn't her normal routine, right? So she's late. And if it was a normal morning, she wouldn't have been in the parking lot. She would have already been gone. So just my true crime brain is thinking, I wonder, wrong place, wrong time. Somebody saw her and she was a beautiful woman. She was a very attractive woman, and that's where my mind goes when I think about the elements that we have so far.
Yeah. I mean, this is still morning. People are starting to get up for their commute. So it's a risky time to abduct someone also.
It is. Yeah. It's so bizarre. It's definitely bizarre any way you slice it. But let's make sure before we talk about theories, let's remember who Jodi was.
Yeah.
So she was born in 1968. She grew up in Minnesota. She was described as a small town girl with big ambitions. And she was part of a state champion golf team, 2-time state champion golfer. And she later studied broadcasting at St. Cloud State. And she was chasing her dream of becoming a national news anchor.
Yeah, and friends described her as driven, upbeat, passionate. I mean, to want to be and to be qualified to be on TV as an anchor, Claire, you know better than anyone. You have to radiate this certain charisma. I mean, you have to be you have to be friendly, you have to be passionate, you have to be, well spoken. She actually kept a journal that said, "Live with passion daily, be generous, be kind." I mean, you have to exude this confidence that people will trust you reporting the news on air.
Yeah, and that all just makes the violence of her disappearance more jarring. It really stands out to me, especially as someone who is a journalist, and you think about all the ways that you interact with the public as a journalist. You're many times going into unknown places, walking up to people, asking them questions, starting conversations with strangers. That's the business. And so the idea that someone would take advantage of her openness like that is it's just so tragic.
It is. And ironically, as a reporter, you'd want people to get your story right in the reporting. So ironically, there was some early reporting at the scene that said a bloody palm print was found on her car, and that turned out not to be true. But investigators did clarify that a palm print was found on a nearby pole instead, which just widens this crime scene even more. I mean, this is, and even, I go back to this bent car key in the car. Like, how much force does that require?
Yeah.
The whole thing is very unsettling.
It is. And, people are asking questions like, did she know her attacker?
Right.
Was someone lying in wait for her? Investigators believe the crime was likely committed by someone who knew her schedule. That's what they've deduced, because even though she was late, it was still really early to be leaving. So, yeah.
It was, yeah. And very hauntingly, Jodi herself had told police late in 1994 that she felt she was being followed by someone and that someone drove a white truck. So that detail has really come back to haunt the investigation.
Yes.
Did Jodi knew who it was? I don't think so, because you would have identified the person. It was just a white truck that she had reported.
And you think about being on camera, being public facing. This is 1995, so there's not social media. We're not used to actually seeing people like local news anchors on your computer, or you only see them on TV.
Right.
And the idea that people would become infatuated with these public figures, it's not uncommon that can happen, especially back then when you didn't have just a steady stream of people to watch all the time. You had like a handful, especially if you're living in a small town. You had your local news crew, right? Maybe the newspaper, the radio, but television is going to be the most accessible. And the idea that she had a stalker, I think, is probably the strongest theory in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I think she even thought she had a stalker. So
right.
That's something, as someone who is aware of her surroundings, as she would have been, because you can never turn that part of your brain off when you're a reporter, probably right.
So let's talk about an early person of interest.
Yes.
So one name looms large, John Van Cise. So he was a much older man and considered a friend of Jodi's, and he was the last known person to see her alive. So the night before she vanished, Jodi went to his apartment to watch a birthday video that he had filmed for her.
That's creepy. Is that not creepy?
Yeah, it's unusual to me, but they were friends, and maybe this is something that, she's on television. Maybe she liked this type of gift. I don't know. It feels creepy to me, especially in hindsight, but yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a compilation reel. Who knows? Right. It's true.
Right.
But the next morning he appeared at her apartment complex while police were processing the scene, which is not unusual for a friend, maybe, to get wind of this and, go to make sure, see if your friend's okay. But a witness later recalled his first words being, "She's gone." Now that obviously could be interpreted in many different ways. So we'll not pass judgment on that.
Yeah. It's definitely been noted that he was nervous and he was behaving somewhat suspiciously. He even forgot like Jodi's name when he was questioned at first, but they went through the process with him. They interviewed him. They actually did a search warrant on his vehicle a couple years later, but nothing ever came of it. And John Van Cise died in 2024.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and I guess suspicions, he was the first suspect. So suspicions about him never fully went away. I mean,
Correct.
yeah.
So in 2022, there was a new name that really came up. It was from an ABC 2020 episode that revived interest in Jodi's case. So the name that they brought up was Brad Millerburn, and he was the ex-husband of Jodi's close friend Patty.
So yeah, Patty came forward after the broadcast, saying she was 100% positive that Millerburn had met Jodi, that he had matched a sketch of a suspicious man seen near her apartment the morning she vanished.
Yeah, so this is really strange to think about this, but this is like the ex-husband of one of her good friends. And so I guess after the episode came out, she felt like she needed to clear the air about this. And the idea that she knew that they had met before and that he looked like the sketch, I mean, that's interesting, right? And they're obviously looking at any leads they can get as the years tick by. So there's something else. Millerbind owned a white Ford Econoline van, which is the same type that witnesses recalled seeing parked near Jodi's building at 4 a.m.
Yeah, it kind of goes to the white truck that she might have, that Jodi herself had mentioned. He was cooperative though. He gave DNA, he took a polygraph, searched his property. There was no evidence found. And, he does remain a person of interest, however.
I think the fact that he gave DNA and took a polygraph, like I'm giving him credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that isn't always the case when people are suspects. So the fact that nothing came of that is that's a point in his favor for sure.
Totally. But there were more suspects.
Yes. So there's also Tony Jackson. So this is a convicted serial rapist living in Mason City, Iowa at the time of Jodi's disappearance.
Okay.
So his rap lyrics even reference Jodi, which led investigators to search a property in 1998, but nothing came of that, sadly.
Yeah. And there's also another upstanding citizen. Not true. Christopher Revak. So he was also another violent offender who later died by suicide. He lived in a duplex right next door to Van Cise. So, his proximity is chilling, but again, no hard evidence. But investigators are looking at anyone and everyone in the area that might have noticed her, around the time of her abduction.
Yes, you have to go to people who have records of violent crimes and they're in proximity. They have the opportunity to commit this crime. If they're not behind bars, but they've done terrible things before, right? Especially once you've gone through like the close contacts, you're like, okay, who could have done this? And like I said earlier, is it a crime of opportunity? And these criminals, they don't have to know their victims. They just look for an easy target. So if she's distracted, trying to get to work late, maybe it's as simple as that.
That's right. But then there's also another maybe connection with a friend of hers.
Yes. So there's all sorts of mysteries that are kind of orbiting around Jodi's case. And some theorize that her disappearance is linked to the mysterious death of her friend Billy Prune. So he died from a gunshot wound 3 months before Jodi disappeared.
And how was his death related?
Yes. So his death was first ruled a suicide, but they later changed it to undetermined. So that kind of opened the door for other possibilities.
Well, and we know that's very rare for that.
Yes, we do know that is rare. Yeah.
Wow. So Pruin had been very vocal about some local drug problems, I guess like in the area. And some believe Jodi might have been digging too deep into his death. So, maybe she was silenced like he was.
Right. As an investigative journalist, maybe she was uncovering names and information and things that people wanted kept quiet, and they decided to eliminate her. Again, this all feels like a stretch, but this is where we are, right? They are looking at anything and everything because it's just been years and years of dead ends.
It's so sad. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope they have DNA that can somehow be put to use at some point. A lot of
Right.
cases are being solved that way now.
And the fact that they're taking DNA from these suspects makes me think that they have something to compare it to.
Correct.
Like they have the car, they have these various items. It sounds like there is some type of suspect DNA.
Exactly. So there's definitely still hope. I mean, you see cases being solved from all sorts of DNA databases now.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's something that is a very promising development just in crime solving in general. The idea that these cases that seem like impossible to solve, if the technology catches up, they suddenly are very solvable.
They are. Now, one thing I found strange in this case is she was declared legally dead in 2001.
Yeah.
And so does that close the case? I mean, does that leave the...
No, it definitely does not close the case. What it does is it allows the family to basically go through the actual process of grieving that loss, and then all of the financial entanglements that might have been related to her can be resolved. So it's something that families look into in long-term disappearance cases where they have their loved one legally declared dead, and it allows you to have a death certificate. It allows you to do things that you can't do with a missing person. So that I don't think anyone believes that she's alive and living out her days somewhere, because at this point it's just impossible to imagine a scenario like that. But hope has never died. Her family still wants to find answers, and they continue to talk about her on the anniversary of her disappearance. And there's a brand new documentary on Hulu that is out now that looks at what happened to Jodi, and people are looking for answers again, and I don't think they're going to stop, Susan.
No, and what's so sad is that her mother passed away in 2014, never knowing what happened to her daughter. Her sisters, Joanne and Jill, really still continue. They've never let go. They've never stopped searching for answers. So, it's just, you just feel horrible for the family.
Yes, her family released a statement that said, "True peace will only be given to us when Jodi is found and justice is served."
Yeah, I mean, it's an epitome of a justice pending case we're talking about.
Yes.
It
is.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case, really just isn't about, it is about Jodi, but it's also about staying safe in public, and, how women do need to be extra careful, and, being young and vibrant and visible could have made her a target, but, we also don't know, we don't have the full story. So, it's just a great reminder to always be vigilant.
Yes. And her family continues to search for answers. This is one of the cases that really launched the whole billboard movement into true crime conversations and missing persons conversations. There was a big billboard about Jodi. Over the years, they've tried different ways to bring attention to this case. And I just really believe that someday we will know what happened to Jodi, and I hope that day is coming soon.
Yeah. I mean, for Jodi, justice is still pending.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with an all new case.
Until then, stay skeptical, stay curious, and stay tuned.
Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.